Hello, fellow wanderers, tonight. I'm inviting you to throw on a fur cloak, breathe in the smell of pine sap and wood smoke, and step sideways through history to a place where the wind tastes of salt and steel. That's right, we're talking Viking times. And you're not just any old Norse soul, you're a shield maiden. Yep, you hair-tangled, heart reckless, sword arm itching for adventure. If you've ever thought the gym is boring, I'd rather raid a monastery, or wondered whether horned helmets were actually a thing spoiler fashion police would say no. But let's not let the facts ruin the fantasy. You're in the right saga. Tonight, we charge through the misty fjords and thundering longhouse halls of your life as a Viking Shieldmaiden and more. Along the way, you might lock eyes with a skald who sings worse than he smells, or share a roast turnip with a jarl who's convinced he's descended from Odin, though. Honestly, his beard isn't nearly epic enough for that kind of claim. If you're tuning in from Stockholm at midnight or Helsinki at 2 or else drop a comment seriously. Who's listening to Viking tales under their duvet at this hour? Hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell if you don't want to miss the next saga. Now, light a candle, ignore the ghostly draft rattling your window, and follow me. The sea is calling, the ravens are circling, and your shield is waiting. Let's get raiding. You wake before the rest of the world, or at least before the part of the world that hasn't sworn an oath to Odin or lost a wager to Thor. It's one of those rare, quiet moments, the kind that makes you almost forget about the sheep bleeding, the axe needing sharpening, and the pile of laundry your mother says is taller than the last king's mead tab. There's a chill in the air, of course, and the sky above the fjord is painted in streaks of purple and gold, the kind of colors that make you want to steal a brush and paint your own saga on the side of the nearest longhouse, except, let's face it, you'd probably get in trouble for that. And it's not even breakfast yet. You push open the creaky door and step out into the dawn. Instantly, the cold nips at your nose, like an overzealous puppy, only less cute and with a tendency to turn your breath into small clouds. The earth is solid under your feet, damp with dew and crisscrossed by tiny, silver spiderwebs, nature's version of embroidery, though even your Aunt Sigrid would be hard-pressed to match this handiwork. The scent of pine and distant smoke drifts down from the hills. Somewhere, a gull laughs at its own joke, which, if you ask anyone who's ever cleaned up after one, probably isn't funny at all. You hear the fjord before you see it, a slow, steady slap of water against rock, like the world's laziest drummer. There's a rhythm to it, a heartbeat that seems to say, you're here, you're alive, and, by the way, you still owe Bjorn that silver coin. You ignore the coin. Bjorn always asks for things at the wrong moment, with a few quick steps and a silent prayer not to slip on that treacherous patch of moss. Viking pride and muddy backsides do not mix. You're on the bluff overlooking the water. The village behind you is mostly silent, except for a rooster who has opinions about everything. Ahead, the fjord stretches out, glassy and mysterious, catching the early sun like a pool of melted gold. Far across the water, the first wisps of smoke rise from another village, a quiet reminder that somewhere, someone else is also up far too early. Cursing the cold and thinking about breakfast, your hand finds the rough grain of your shield. It's still new, last year's wood, this year's paint. The boss in the center is slightly off kilter, which your brother insists is authentic, but you're pretty sure he just didn't measure right. The leather strap still smells faintly of the cow. It came from a creature who, frankly, would not have approved of this whole battle business. You breathe deep and listen. Somewhere in the far-off hills, a wolf howls. You tell yourself it's just saying good morning, though you make a mental note to sharpen your knife. The wind carries the faintest hint of salt from the sea, mixing with the earthy tang of mud and the green bite of juniper. You wiggle your toes inside your boots. They're a little too small now, thanks. Growth spurt, but you don't complain. Complaining is for those with too much free time and not enough axes to swing. Your thoughts drift to the old stories, the ones about shield maidens before you, fierce and beautiful, hair flying, shields flashing, as if the gods themselves had thrown them onto the battlefield just to see what would happen. There's Lagertha, the legend everyone talks about, who once supposedly took down half a rival army before breakfast, which, if true, puts your morning chores to shame, and Brynhild, who was so stubborn that even being set on fire didn't seem to slow her down, just a minor inconvenience, she probably said, patting out the flames. You wonder if the Shieldmaidens ever had to worry about splinters, or if they also got that annoying itch under their helmet when things got tense. No one ever sings about that part. Skalds are notorious for skipping the details unless it's someone else's embarrassing moment. Behind you, a door bangs open, and your little brother stumbles out, hair sticking in all directions. He scratches, yawns, and gives you a look that says, "Why are you awake?" You shrug. Shieldmaidens don't need reasons. You decide, besides, it's not like you could sleep through the excitement anyway. There's a quiet pride in being first up. You get to see the world without all the noise, the uncles arguing about fishing rights, the cousins plotting pranks, the mothers swapping rumors like traders at a market. Here, you can be just yourself for a few moments. No one watching, no one judging if your hair is more bird's nest than battle ready. You run a hand through it anyway, out of habit, and manage to snag it on a knot the size of a walnut. Some things even a warrior can't conquer. The first bell sounds in the village. It's really just a dented pan, but tradition says it keeps away trolls who, to be fair, probably have better things to do than mess with your breakfast. The sound rolls down to the docks, where the boats bob in the half-light, sails furled, waiting for someone bold or foolish enough to take them out on the water today. You spot your own small vessel, gleaming otter named for the time you tried to fish and came home with nothing but a wet shoe and an angry rodent. Every saga has to start somewhere. The world starts to stir. Smoke thickens from the chimneys. Children's laughter chases away the last of the mist. And the old dogs stretch in the sun, dreaming of stolen sausages. You flex your arm, feeling the new weight of muscle and the old ache of yesterday's sparring. Someone calls your name, a voice half annoyed, half amused. Breakfast is ready, and you're late, as usual. One last look at the fjord. The water sparkles, promising adventure, mischief, and probably more chores than glory. But for now, it's yours the whole wild, chilly, beautiful world. You turn, shield slung on your back, heart pounding with anticipation, and a little bit of dread, mostly about the laundry. The day has begun. And you, Shieldmaiden, dreamer, proud owner of the world's worst-tied boots, are ready. A hush, and breathe. You're barely through the threshold before the longhouse hits you in the face with its full bouquet, wood smoke clinging to the beams. Yesterday's stew bubbling somewhere in the background. And the unmissable, heady aroma of a dozen Vikings who consider washing more of a seasonal event than a daily obligation. But this is home, and you wouldn't trade it for all the perfume baths in the Roman Empire, though if someone offered you a week at the spa, you wouldn't exactly say no. The morning light slants through the smoke holes, catching in floating dust motes and turning everything into a scene straight out of a skald's song, if that song were interrupted every few minutes by a child shrieking, a dog barking, or an ant yelling for someone to mind the fire. There is always something, always about to catch fire. You hear the slap of dough as someone kneads bread, the thunk of an axe splitting kindling, and the endless, low rumble of voices weaving in and out of stories, arguments, and the latest village gossip. Your place at the bench is still warm from whoever slept there, last probably your cousin Hilda, who claims she's just resting her eyes, but somehow manages to nap through the entire breakfast prep. You squeeze in, boots knocking against a tangle of shins and elbows. Someone passes you a hunk of bread dense, dark, and strong enough to double as a weapon if you're not careful. You tear into it, grateful for the butter melting down your fingers, and try to avoid making eye contact with your little brother, who is busy sculpting his porridge into what you sincerely hope is a longship, and not something less noble. Across the table, your uncle regales anyone who will listen, and several who are not listening at all, with the story of his third best raid. Not the famous one, where he claims to have single-handedly outwitted an entire Saxon village, no. This is the one where he accidentally swapped helmets with the Jarl's prize goat and spent half the battle wondering why everyone kept calling him Kid. He laughs loudest at his own jokes, slapping his knee with such vigor you're amazed he hasn't knocked over the salt horn again. It keeps trolls away, he insists, though frankly, you're convinced the only thing his stories keep away are eligible suitors. The clan matriarch, your grandmother, who could shatter a shield with a glare, begins braiding your hair. fingers swift and merciless. She pulls tight, muttering about proper warrior style, and not shaming the ancestors with that bird's nest you call a plait. You wince, but it's a comforting pain, the kind that tells you someone cares enough to make you presentable, even if their hands are rougher than the bark on the old yew outside. She tucks in a stray bead amber from a far-off trader, and for a moment, you feel connected to 1,000 mornings just like this one. Stretching back through the mists of time, conversation swirls around you. Someone's lost a chicken again, and naturally, the culprit is assumed to be either the neighbor's fox or the gods testing our patience. Your cousin, always eager to stir up trouble, whispers rumors of a ship spotted downriver. Its prow carved with something nobody can quite agree on: dragon, wolf, or perhaps just the unfortunate result of too much mead and too little artistic talent. The speculation sparks a heated debate about proper ship design, which somehow turns into a contest of who can belch loudest. Surprise, it's Hilda, who just woke up and is instantly the hero of the hour. Someone strums a lyre, the strings a bit out of tune, and begins a song about yesterday's hunt. The notes wobble, much like the singer's voice, but the rhythm is infectious. You tap your heel in time, letting the noise wrap around you like another layer of fur against the morning chill. You take a moment to just listen. There's a melody in the chaos, the steady rise and fall of voices, the scratch of wooden spoons and bowls, the sizzle of fat over the fire, and somewhere outside, the soft clucking of hens. It's messy, noisy, and absolutely alive. This is the heart of the clan, not the weapons or the war cries, but the daily tangle of people, each one stubborn in their own way, each one woven into the tapestry by bonds of blood, gossip, and shared chores. Suddenly, the Jarl himself bursts in, trailing cold air and the scent of adventure, or possibly fish he's hard to read before the second breakfast. His beard is already bristling with frost, and his voice fills the longhouse like a thunderclap. "Who's up for some real work?" he bellows, brandishing a list of tasks so long you swear it doubles every time you blink. You and the other would-be shield maidens exchange glances, time to see who can sneak out for weapons practice before someone ropes you into mucking out the goat pen. Your best friend, Freydis, elbows you with a grin. "Last one outside has to sing at the feast," she whispers. Already halfway to the door, you lunge after her, almost tripping over a basket of turnips and a toddler wielding a wooden spoon with all the menace of a seasoned berserker. Your grandmother huffs but lets you go, muttering about young fools and their swords as if she hadn't once taken on a bear with nothing but a stick and her bad attitude. You step out again into the light, cheeks flushed, breath fogging the morning air. The longhouse hums behind you, laughter and scolding echoing across the yard. You glance back for just a moment, catching the silhouette of your clan against the glow of the hearth, a moving mosaic of arms, braids, and ambition. There's a wild comfort in it, knowing you're part of something bigger than yourself, a saga that started long before you and will keep running long after. Your hands itch for your shield, your heart thumps with anticipation, and the smell of fresh bread still clings to your fingers. Somewhere out there, the world is waiting to be conquered or, at the very least, outwitted. But for now, this is your place: tangled hair, clashing stories, and the unbreakable bonds of clan. A moment's hush and breathe. Step outside and the world flips from the cozy, stew-scented chaos of the longhouse to the crisp, bracing slap of a Norse morning. The grass sparkles with dew, which, if you're not careful, will soak your boots through before you've even unslung your shield. Across the yard, the training ground awaits a wide, muddy field punctuated by the battered remains of practice targets, a few stubborn shrubs, and the echo of yesterday's heroic or not-so-heroic skirmishes. The place has seen so many bruised egos and splintered shields that you half expect the ground to mutter advice at you. Like, keep your shield up, and watch out for flying turnips around you. The would-be warriors are already at it, young, old, and somewhere in between. Axes thud against logs, wooden swords crash with a satisfying crack that reverberates all the way to the chickens, who, frankly, are unimpressed by the whole spectacle. Your own breath clouds the air, mixing with the tang of cold iron, churned earth, and, faintly, the aftertaste of too hasty breakfast bread. You stretch your arms, feeling the delicious ache of muscles still waking up. Somewhere behind you, Freydis is already boasting that she'll split a shield in two. Just watch, even though last time she swung an axe, she nearly decapitated a cabbage. The cabbage, you'll be glad to know, made a full recovery and is now the unofficial training mascot. Vikings, too, need their lucky charms. An elder your uncle, perhaps, or some distant cousin with too many war stories and not enough patience calls you over, waving a stick that might once have been a sword, or maybe just a particularly aggressive branch. Ready for glory, are you, he teases, eyes twinkling beneath bushy brows, or just trying to escape laundry duty again? You grip your shield, cheeks flushing, and reply with your best. I was born for this face, though. In truth, you'd rather face down a dozen raiders than the wrath of a mother whose linens have gone missing. The day's training begins the way it always does, with stretching, stumbling, and a few creative curses as everyone tries to shake the stiffness from sleep and stone benches. The instructor demonstrates the basic stance, swing. Parry, though, he makes everything look as easy as picking wildflowers. Keep your feet wide, he instructs, stomping the ground, and if you fall over, just pretend you're dodging. Nobody needs to know. You line up for shield drills, shoulder to shoulder with your fellow hopefuls, all trying to look fierce while sneaking sideways glances to make sure you're doing it right. The shields themselves are a hodgepodge, some freshly painted, others chipped and battle-scarred, one decorated with what appears to be a surprisingly accurate portrait of a goat. You heft yours, feeling the familiar weight against your arm, and focus on the rhythm up, forward, brace, and don't let go. No matter how much your forearm burns, then come the axes heavier than you remember, with handles worn smooth by generations of sweaty hands and hopeful dreams. The swing, the crunch of blade against wood, the way the vibration hums up your arms and into your chest. You're not perfect, nobody is, except maybe that one cousin who claims he can chop down a tree just by glaring at it unverified. But with every swing, you feel a little stronger, a little more like the legends. Occasionally, someone's swing goes wild, and the rest of you scatter, ducking and laughing as if the gods themselves have decided to throw in a plot twist. You learn quickly, don't stand behind Bjorn, who has the aim of a drunken squirrel, and don't challenge Hilda to a contest unless you're prepared for a sore backside and a bruised ego. But there's camaraderie in the chaos, a sense that you're all forging not just muscle and skill, but the bonds that turn a loose band of neighbors into a shield wall, a wall you'd trust to hold against the wildest storm or the fiercest enemy, and, occasionally, your own sibling with a stick. Sometimes, the Skald comes by, not to train, but to collect stories hovering at the edges, jotting notes on scraps of hide, ready to turn your most embarrassing tumble into an epic saga for the next feast. You catch his eye, and he grins, already plotting some couplet that will rhyme glory with sorry. You vow to give him nothing but heroics, but the mud has other plans. It only takes one misplaced step, and you're flat on your back, blinking up at the sky while everyone pretends not to laugh but fails spectacularly. As the morning sun climbs, sweat beads on your brow, mixing with the smear of earth across your cheek. The air is alive with shouts, laughter, and the clang of training blades, a racket that would drive the saints mad, but somehow makes your heart feel light. You swap stories with Freydis between drills, comparing bruises and plotting revenge against anyone who tries to sneak an extra turn at the target post. Your breath is sharp in your lungs, your arms heavy, but your spirit unbreakable, even when your legs threaten mutiny. Sometimes, the instructor pauses, eyes distant, and shares a memory, a battle from years past, a comrade lost, a lesson learned the hard way. You listen, half in awe, half hoping your own name will one day be woven into a story like that. Though maybe with a little less mud and a lot more glory. Steel remembers, he says, tapping his sword against your shield. But stories last longer. You tuck that away for later. A secret Shieldmaiden proverb by midday. Your muscles are noodles, your hair escapes its braid, and you're pretty sure you'll be picking splinters out of your fingers until next week. But as you shoulder your shield, sweaty and smiling, you catch your own reflection in a puddle muddy, yes, but undeniably fierce. Maybe. Just maybe. The old legends had mornings like this. Too clumsy, chaotic, and utterly unforgettable. There's a bell from the longhouse lunch, finally, and the promise of stew and bread with only a little extra ash this time. If the gods are kind, you head back, shoulder to shoulder with your friends. Laughter rising above the din of the yard, your heart soaring with the knowledge that every bruise is one step closer to the stories you'll one day tell. Steel, saga, and the sweet sting of training, this is what forges a Shieldmaiden. A hush, and breathe. If you thought a Viking day was all mud, muscle, and mayhem, think again. The real adventure starts at the feast. By the time the sun surrenders behind the pines and shadows slip like gossip through the village, the longhouse swells with energy you can almost taste. Outside, the wind howls with all the subtlety of an offended troll. But within these smoky walls, the air is thick with anticipation. The sweet, smoky bite of roasting meat. And, occasionally, the unmissable whiff of something that's been left on the fire a little too long. If you're expecting candlelit manners and dainty nibbles, you may want to sneak off now before someone offers you a drinking horn as big as your leg. You take your place at the trestle table, elbow to elbow with your clan, Shieldmaiden squeezed in beside bearded warriors, children darting underfoot like mischievous spirits on a dare. Platters clatter, laughter bounces off timber beams, and someone's already started a debate about whose turn it is to fetch more firewood spoiler. Everyone blames the Scald, who is conveniently busy tuning his lyre, badly. There's no such thing as a quiet dinner here. You catch the rhythm of the room, the hollow tap of mugs, the crash of a dropped trencher, the flurry of last-minute seat shuffling that always ends with someone perched dangerously close to the dog's nose. And the food. You rip a chunk from a still-steaming loaf, the crust so tough it could stop a Saxon arrow, the crumb inside warm and fragrant, slathered with butter that melts instantly on your tongue. Bowls of stew pass from hand to hand, chunks of venison, carrots, and turnip bobbing in a rich broth. Flecked with herbs, your aunt insists she picked at dawn, though you have your suspicions about the secret ingredient she won't reveal. Roasted fish gleams, cheeks sizzling, while cabbages always cabbages turn up in mysterious forms, some disguised as specialty dishes, others hiding beneath piles of onions, as if that will fool anyone. Someone starts pouring mead into horn cups golden, sweet, and far stronger than anyone will admit, except for the uncle who boasts he can outdrink Odin the last time he tried. He ended up serenading the sheep at midnight. You take a tentative sip, feeling warmth bloom in your belly. The flavor sharp as laughter, smooth as honey, with an aftertaste of risk. The feast is a performance the way fingers tear bread. The flick of a knife as someone carves a haunch. The sudden burst of song from the old woman 3 seats down, who's decided it's her turn to lead the room. The walls pulse with stories, some true, many not passed like heirlooms from tongue to tongue, made grander and less believable with every retelling. Tonight's special, a tale about the time a pair of Shieldmaidens, one suspiciously sharing your name, rescued a wayward pig from a bear, using only wit, a rope, and a cabbage so large it had its own shadow. "And what did you do with the bear?" someone shouts, and the storyteller grins. "Invited him for supper. Bears know a good stew when they smell one." Laughter explodes. The bear, mercifully, is not present to object. The Scald stands on the bench. No, really? He's on the bench now. And yes, he's wobbling dangerously, lyre in hand, eyes sparkling with the mischief of someone about to rewrite history. To the bravest among us, he cries, lifting his cup, the Shieldmaidens who remind us that courage isn't just a word for men who lose their helmets. The crowd roars, some out of pride, others out of the sheer delight of ribbing their favorite warrior. You feel your cheeks flush, caught between pride and the urge to duck under the table. And then, of course, come the toasts. The world's most awkward, raucous, and occasionally dangerous tradition. Each toast brings its own hazards, meads sloshing, platters teetering, and stories growing wilder with every round. To the ones who came home muddy, but came home shouts your friend, waving a leg of lamb. To the goat who stole the Jarl's shoe yells another, to which the Jarl's shoe now repaired. Dignity less so can only grimace and drink, for the uninitiated. It's a perilous sport. Try to lift your mug before the punchline, and you're doomed to drink to something like to Hilda's legendary turnip stew. May we never taste it again. Try to decline. And you'll be heckled by the old men at the end of the bench who claim Vikings don't refuse a challenge. You learn to nod, smile, and pace yourself, letting the warmth of the room seep into your bones, letting yourself laugh at the ridiculousness of it all. Somewhere in the chaos, a dog finds its way under the table and plants itself firmly on your foot, heavy and determined to share in your good fortune, or at least your crumbs. You reach down, scratching behind its ears, and it leans in so trustingly, you're forced to admit out loud, to the table's delight, that it's got more battle scars than you. Outside, the storm rattles the shutters, the flames inside flickering and tossing shadows onto faces shining with grease, sweat, and a joy that borders on defiance. You feel the pulse of belonging in every raised glass, every playful insult, every round of remember when shouted across the platters. This is the real heart of the village, not just in the fighting or the raiding, but in the gathering, the feasting, the way a story or a song can turn an ordinary night into something just a little bit legendary. As the hours wear on, voices grow hoarse, laughter softer, and the bravest souls begin to drift toward sleep in corners and on benches. Mead cup still in hand, you linger, soaking in the glow, the gentle lull of old fables and the taste of roasted apples lingering on your tongue. If tomorrow brings rain or trouble or even, gods forbid, more cabbage, you know you'll face it with these same voices beside you, sharing food, stories, and 100 awkward toasts. A hush and breathe. You've survived another feast, staggered home with the warmth of mead in your belly and the sound of your clan's laughter echoing in your ears, only to wake to that peculiar in-between hush, too early for chores, too late for more sleep, with a mind wandering restlessly through memories and meaning. On mornings like these, when the fog is so thick you could almost braid it, you're sure the world is stitched together by secrets, omens, and the mysterious whims of the Norns, the three old women who, rumor has it, spend eternity weaving the fate of every soul, yours included, with as much patience as your grandmother and a lot more drama. You slip quietly from the longhouse, the rush matting cold beneath your toes, and tiptoe past your snoring uncle still clutching a mead horn as if it holds the secret to eternal youth. Outside, the world is hushed, shrouded in mist that curls around the yard like the softest wool cloak, muffling every sound except the distant caw of a raven, never a casual visitor, always a messenger, or so the old tales insist. The air smells of wet earth and wood smoke, laced with the metallic tang of dew on iron hinges and the faint, sweet promise of wildflowers blooming somewhere out of sight. This is the hour for secrets. You make your way to the edge of the grove, where the oldest yew stands, knotted and watchful, its roots sinking deeper than even the bravest Shieldmaiden dares to dig. It's said the gods themselves whisper here. If you know how to listen and don't mind a bit of cryptic advice, something along the lines of, always bring a backup sword or never trust a prophecy involving chickens. With your fingers, you brush aside a drift of leaves and kneel, feeling the rough, damp bark beneath your palm and the prickling awareness that you are, for a moment, truly alone. From a pouch at your belt, you draw your runes, smooth, cool stones, each etched with a mark that is part alphabet, part spell, part family joke. Your cousin swears hers only ever spell out, "Don't even try it." You cast them on the ground, watching as they settle some upright, some askew, one determined to wedge itself between your toes as if hoping for a ride. The first rune Rido, the journey. Fitting, you think, for a life spent walking the line between legend and laundry duty. The next algaes, protection and old friend, always turning up when you least expect it. Like the neighbor who borrows salt and never returns it. You smile, tracing the lines, feeling the subtle shiver up your spine that says you've brushed against something older than memory. You try to read the patterns the way your mother does, eyes half closed, head cocked as if she's listening to voices you can't quite hear. The runes don't answer questions, she always says. They just remind you of what you already know, which, if you ask the local wise woman, is a fancy way of admitting the runes are both wise and frustratingly vague like all the best advice. Still, the act itself is a comfort, a way to mark the day and tether yourself to tradition. Even as you roll your eyes and hope for better omens, then, you will step in something unpleasant today. And the Dream Shieldmaidens are notorious dreamers, and you're no exception. Some nights, you dream of roaring seas and starry skies, ships leaping from wave to wave as if the world were nothing but one wild promise. Other times, the dreams are stranger a white wolf at your heels, a crown made of snow, a voice you know but can't quite place whispering, "Don't forget your helmet." When you tell these dreams at breakfast, the clan listens with half a smile, half an ear, and a whole lot of skepticism. If dreams could plow fields, we'd never go hungry, your aunt says, rolling her eyes as she cracks eggs into a skillet. Just don't go marrying any shadowy strangers. All right, but you know the stories everyone does. Dreams are never just dreams. Once, the old tales say, a girl dreamed of a dragon's eye and woke to find a gold coin in her bed. Another time, someone saw a field of black feathers and, that evening, found a raven perched on her windowsill, croaking out riddles that not even the skald could answer. Some in the village sleep with a bit of iron under their pillow, just in case the elves come calling though. Let's be honest, elves have enough mischief to make without bothering your average snorer. The clan is riddled with superstitions, more tangled than last winter's fishing nets. Never whistle after dark, or you'll call up a storm. Always greet the cat, or risk a week of bad luck. If you find a spider in your stew, congratulations. It's a sign of unexpected guests and, more urgently, a reason to fetch a new bowl. You've learned to toss salt over your left shoulder, thank the fire each morning, and tie a bit of red thread around your wrist when venturing into the woods. You're not sure these things work, but you're not about to risk Odin's attention by skipping them. Today, a neighbor appears at your side, face pale, eyes wide. "Saw 3 magpies at dawn," she whispers, clutching her shawl. Bad luck. Unless you spot a 4th. You offer her half your bread and scan the treetops, just in case the magpies are listening. Sometimes, superstition is a form of kindness, a way of caring for each other in a world that can change with the tilt of a raven's wing. Before you leave, you press your palm to the U and whisper a small wish not for glory or riches, but for steady hands and clear skies. The kinds of gifts that never make it into the sagas but are worth more than gold. You tuck your runes away, feeling lighter, steadier, ready to face the day with whatever omens, dreams, or inexplicable chicken-based prophecies it brings. The mist is lifting now, burned away by the stubborn sun, and the world feels new, fragile, and shining. As you walk back toward the longhouse, you catch the echo of a story half remembered and the promise that, whatever the Norns are weaving, you'll meet it with laughter, courage, and maybe a lucky rune in your pocket. A hush and breathe. There's a saying in your clan that nothing good ever comes from waking up to the sound of ravens unless, of course, you're hoping for trouble, in which case you're about to have a banner day. It starts before dawn, the sky barely bruised with light, when you hear the unmistakable caw, sharp and insistent, as if someone is knocking on your door with a beak instead of a fist. You burrow deeper under your fur cloak, trying to ignore it, but fate and the world's most persistent bird will not be denied. By the time you stagger outside, the yard is alive with commotion. Ravens wheel above the thatched roofs, black wings flashing against the paling sky, their cries echoing over the fjord. Your brother, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, points upward and declares, Odin's messengers, which is either very wise or an excuse to skip morning chores. Either way, it sets the whole village buzzing, because everyone knows a raven overhead means the world's about to tilt in some new and inconvenient direction. You half expect to see the old gods themselves standing in the mist, but all you find are your neighbors huddled together, clutching cloaks and muttering superstitions. Someone swears he saw a raven land on the Jarl's ship. Someone else claims it stole a silver spoon, as if ravens have a taste for fine tableware. Your mother gives you a look that says, If this turns out to be another one of your adventures, don't expect me to wash your tunics, and then thrusts a hunk of bread into your hands. Because even on the brink of destiny, breakfast comes first. The Jarl appears, looking as grim as an unpaid skald. His beard bristles, his voice carries, and the crowd hushes as he announces what everyone's already guessed. The omens have turned. The time for sitting by the fire is over. We need volunteers. And just like that, the adventure you've been dreaming about and occasionally dreading has arrived on your doorstep, squawking loudly and demanding attention. You're not the first to step forward, but you're not last either. Freydis grabs your hand with that wild, delighted look in her eye, the one she wore the time you tried to climb the tallest pine in the valley and got stuck halfway up. You can't help but grin, even as your heart bangs against your ribs like a drum at the midsummer festival. You're not sure if it's courage, stupidity, or just a stubborn refusal to let the boys have all the fun. There's a quick flurry of preparation shields snatched from hooks, swords checked and rechecked, food packed into leather sacks. Everyone trying to look braver than they feel. Someone, probably your uncle, starts telling a story about the last time he answered a call like this. It rained the whole journey. The soup was thin as water. And the only thing we managed to raid was a barrel of spoiled herring, he says. But you can tell from the way his eyes shine that he'd do it all again in a heartbeat. You pause at the edge of the village, the world suddenly vast and unknown. The grass is slick beneath your boots, the river below churns with secret promises, and the wind carries the faint scent of salt and adventure. You feel your stomach flip, your hands tremble just a bit. You tell yourself you're ready, though the only thing you're truly prepared for is the part where things never go according to plan. The company forms at the dock warriors, Shieldmaidens, a handful of nervous-looking farmers, and, of course, the Skald, who claims he's only along to chronicle your glory, but has suspiciously packed more cheese than ink. The longship rocks gently, its carved prow painted with curling shapes and, if you look closely, more than a few improvements added by the village children, including what appears to be a dragon with a very modern haircut. The wood is cold beneath your fingers, the sail snaps overhead, and your whole life, every feast, every training bout, every whispered story feels like it's gathered in this single, spinning moment. Ravens watch from the treetops as you shove off, their eyes glittering with secrets you'll never quite unravel. The oars dip into the water, slow at first, then faster, each pull a promise, each stroke a challenge hurled at the horizon. The fjord opens up, shimmering with the first fragile sunlight, and your heart soars. Even as your arms protest the effort, the river is alive with sound, the creak of oars, the slap of water, the quiet murmur of prayers offered to gods and ancestors and, in Freydis's case, to the hope that the ship's cook remembered the salt. You catch your own reflection in the water, fierce and uncertain, a shield maiden on the cusp of something new. The world looks different from here, wilder, sharper, more full of stories just waiting to be written. The journey is not without mishaps. Someone drops their helmet overboard, prompting much wailing and a quick dip into the icy water with a rescue that will, no doubt, grow more dramatic in the retelling. Lunch is hard bread and dried fish, chewed with laughter and complaints. And you learn that rowing for hours makes even the worst turnip taste like a king's feast. Clouds gather and scatter, rain spits for a while, and the wind tries its best to spin the ship in circles. But your crew is stubborn, and the spirit of adventure stronger than any storm. And the ravens they follow, gliding overhead, never far. Sometimes landing on the prow to eye you as if weighing your worth. Are they truly Odin's spies, keeping tally of your deeds, or just clever birds with a taste for leftover cheese? You decide not to ask. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. As the first unfamiliar coastline rises ahead, your nerves return, knotted and restless. But the call to adventure loud as a raven's cry, old as the hills rings in your blood now. You realize, somewhere between your last nervous laugh and your first sight of land, that you're exactly where you're meant to be. It's not about being fearless. It's about stepping into the unknown with your heart pounding, your shield ready, and a wild hope that this story, your story, will be worth the telling. The ship glides to shore, the oars lift, dripping, and the world holds its breath. The ravens settle, silent at last. Your boots hit the sand, a hush, and breathe. You don't realize how heavy a shield really is until you've had to hold one up for hours elbow locked, shoulders screaming, sweat trickling down your spine despite the chill in the air. There's nothing glorious about it. Your hand aches, your forearm shakes, and you're sure you'll wake up tomorrow with your arm fused to a circle of wood and iron, the world's least convenient fashion statement. But there's no time to complain, because the shield wall is forming, and you, Shieldmaiden, wide-eyed and wild-hearted, are in it. Mud squelches beneath your boots, sucking at your heels with every step. You can taste the earth, metallic and cold, as you breathe in deep, lungs burning with nerves and the memory of last night's feast. The sky is a heavy blanket, low and gray, threatening rain, or worse, around you. The others shift and mutter, Freydis to your left, a gleam of mischief in her eye even now. Bjorn to your right, humming a tune he swears is lucky, though it sounds suspiciously like the one he uses when sneaking the last honey cake. Ahead, the enemy just shapes for now, moving through the mist. But you know the stories. Some say they're giants, others that they're just men with better helmets. Either way, they're coming, and you're here, shield to shield with friends, rivals, cousins, and the occasional accidental volunteer who's still not quite sure how they got roped into this. The old warriors bark orders, voices rough as gravel, shields up, eyes forward. You snap your shield into place, feeling the satisfying thunk as its rim meets your neighbor's. The wall is more than just wood and muscle, it's trust, built on 100 shared mornings and 1,000 small acts of bravery. You hear the scrape of metal, the quickened breath of the girl beside you, the far-off clatter of someone tripping over their own sword. Don't worry, he'll recover. Though the song about it will be merciless, suddenly, everything is noise and heartbeat and the slap of your own pulse in your ears. Arrows hiss overhead, some finding wood, some dirt. A few unlucky enough to meet a shield's face. The first clash is all confusion shouts, curses, a flash of red at the edge of your vision. Your shield shudders, the force of a blow rattling your teeth. But you hold. That's what matters, hold. You remember the drills, the barked instructions, the laughter and stumbles of training days. Now, it's real. And every lesson you've learned becomes the difference between a bruise and a broken bone. The mud is everywhere. It's in your boots, smeared across your cheeks, splattered on your shield. You can't help but laugh, a wild, giddy sound that bubbles up from somewhere deep inside. Because there's something about this about standing here, unbreakable line among the chaos that feels bigger than you. You swing, parry, brace, and somehow, against all odds, you're still upright. Freydis lets out a whoop, swinging her axe with more enthusiasm than precision. That's for last winter's stew, she yells, for reasons only she understands. And the enemy stumbles back, clearly unprepared for culinary vengeance. To your right, Bjorn is singing louder now off-key, but steady. The sort of song that makes you want to laugh and charge all at once. Time stretches, then snaps. The shield wall flexes, absorbs blow after blow. You feel the pressure of your neighbors, their bodies warm against yours. And you're grateful for every elbow and sharp word that's kept you sharp. Someone drops a spear, another picks it up. Hands shaking but determined. The line holds. The old stories never mention the small things, the way sweat stings your eyes, the grit between your teeth, the itch under your helmet that you can't scratch. They don't mention the moment you lock eyes with someone across the chaos and realize you both want to be anywhere else. Yet here you are. They don't talk about the ridiculousness of battle cries, or how sometimes the loudest noise is your own breath, ragged and real. There's a moment when the enemy breaks, stumbles back, uncertain. You push forward, the wall surging like a wave, boots slipping in the mud. You roar not because you're fearless, but because fear can't hear itself over the sound. You see faces painted with sweat and dirt, eyes wide, mouths open in shouts and laughter and raw defiance. The clash is quick, brutal, confusing a tumble of bodies, shields, mud, and, somewhere in the mix, your best friend's braid flying past your nose like a banner. Then, suddenly, it's over. The field is quiet except for the moan of the wind, the distant caw of a raven, and the collective sigh of 100 warriors who are just grateful to still have all their limbs attached. You look down, blood on your knuckles, mud on your face, but your shield is still in one piece, and your heart is thundering with a wild, giddy pride. Someone starts to laugh, a ragged, joyful sound that spreads like fire. "We did it," Freitas yells, punching the air, and the others join in, shouting, hugging, collapsing into the mud. You grin, tears mixing with sweat, and let yourself be pulled into the tangle of celebration for a moment. You're all just people tired, filthy, exhilarated. You slap backs, exchange insults, share flasks of something that burns all the way down. The Skald appears, notebook in hand, already scribbling notes. What do you call that maneuver, where you tripped over your own feet and somehow took down 3 men at once? He asks, and you shrug. Shieldmaiden's luck, you reply, and everyone laughs. Later, when the sun finally breaks through the clouds and the mud starts to dry, you'll gather your gear, check your bruises, and relive every moment with embellishments. The wall will be rebuilt, stories will grow taller, and the next time the call comes, you'll be ready. For now, you lie back in the grass, shield beside you, eyes on the sky. The world is vast, beautiful, and yours. A hush and breathe. Victory always smells a little bit like sweat, smoke, and wet wool, not exactly the perfume of legends, but it's a scent you'll come to cherish. The chaos of the shield wall fades, the last shouts drift away, and the field settles into a hush that's both triumphant and slightly awkward, as everyone waits to see if there's a second round, or if it's finally safe to take a breath and loosen the death grip on your shield. Someone gives the all clear, a horn blown, a shout from the Jarl, or sometimes just the slow, collective realization that the only thing charging now are the local goats. You're alive, you're victorious, and you're covered in enough mud to start your own farm. Now comes the part they never tell you about in the songs The Plundering, if the old sagas are to be believed. This is the moment when the sky opens, the gods rain down gold, and everyone walks off into the sunset with a chest of jewels, a shiny helmet, and the undying admiration of their peers. Reality, you'll find, involves a lot more arguing about who gets what, at least 3 people falling into a ditch, and someone finding a pile of turnips and insisting it's probably magic. Welcome to the Loot Round, Viking Edition. The first step, naturally, is to check that you're not still bleeding anywhere important. You pat yourself down, examining bruises like badges and discovering, to your mild horror, a clump of grass stuck in your braids which, you will claim later, was a strategic camouflage move. Freitas, ever the optimist, points out that at least you still have both boots, unlike poor Bjorn, who is hopping around with one sock and the world's most tragic expression. The Jarl calls everyone together and does his best impression of a fair judge, though you know he has his eye on the biggest loot pile like a cat stalking a mouse. The spoils are laid out gleaming, or at least muddy and vaguely shiny in the sun, shields with mysterious symbols, a few battered swords, a tangle of jewelry that will take a week to untangle, and oddly enough, a crate of apples, still crisp and smelling of autumn. Someone claims they found a golden cup, but when pressed, it turns out to be brass, and only half full of someone else's teeth. The loot etiquette, unwritten but ironclad, now comes into play. First rule: finders are keepers, unless someone else finds it at the same time, in which case it's a wrestling match and the loser buys drinks for a week. Second rule: if it looks cursed glowing, humming, or inexplicably warm, call the wise woman before touching it. Last time, Bjorn's lucky coin was actually a button from the priest's cloak, and the whole village had to sit through a 3-hour lecture on honesty. Third rule: apples are always fair game, unless you want to risk a feud with the village children, who treat fruit with the seriousness of an oath to Odin. You try your hand at loot hunting, sifting through bundles of cloth, poking at strange helmets, and discreetly avoiding anything that smells like old cheese. You find a brooch shaped like a wolf, the kind you've seen in old stories, and for a moment, your heart flips with the thrill of discovery. You slip it into your pouch, planning to show your mother and possibly pretend you found it while fighting off 10 enemies single-handed, though the mud on your face might suggest otherwise. Around you, the others haggle, brag, and occasionally sulk. Freydis claims a silver arm ring, declaring it proof of her noble destiny, despite everyone knowing she once tripped over her own destiny in the goat pen. Bjorn, having recovered his boot, discovers a bundle of cloth filled with what turns out to be, after much anticipation, someone's spare undergarments. Better luck next time, you tell him. And he laughs, tossing them aside with a flourish that would make a king jealous. When all is said and done, the Jarl oversees the final tally, making sure the spoils are split as fairly as possible, which is to say, everyone argues. And in the end, he walks away with the best sword and the shiniest apple. There's grumbling, there's laughter, and there's the inevitable promise that, next time, I'm choosing first. Then comes the best part, the celebration. Someone strikes up a song, feet stamp, and voices rise in a chorus so loud it scares off any lingering ravens. The loot is forgotten for a while, replaced by the joy of victory and the sweetness of being together. Battered but unbowed, the Skald begins spinning the story already, exaggerating the danger, glossing over the mistakes, and adding enough heroic detail to keep the legend alive until the next raid. And there she stood, he declares, gesturing at you, shield high, hair wild, holding off 3 number 5 fierce foes. You raise your mug in salute, cheeks flushed with pride and maybe a bit of embarrassment, but mostly pride. But beneath the bravado and the boasting, you sense something quieter, gratitude, relief, and the silent understanding that victory is never guaranteed. You share a nod with Freydis, a clasp of hands with Bjorn, and a promise to remember this day, even when the bruises fade and the apples are gone. As dusk falls, the loot is packed up, wounds are tended, and stories are swapped for the 10th time. The field looks different now, emptied of threat, alive with possibility. You sit on the grass, polishing your treasure and watching the sky burn orange and pink, feeling the tiredness seep into your bones, the victory, the laughter, the messy joy of plunder. It's all yours for tonight, tomorrow. You'll head home, arms heavy with spoils and heart light with memories. You'll exaggerate a little or a lot when you tell your family. And you'll tuck your wolf brooch somewhere safe, a reminder that even in the mud and chaos, you found something bright and wild and worth the trouble, a hush, and breathe. There are days when you feel the gods hovering over your shoulder, as real as the wind off the fjord or the goosebumps prickling down your arms. This is one of those days, a day so thick with omens that even the village cats are on their best behavior, which, for a cat, means they only knock over 1 offering bowl instead of 3. The victory celebration is barely over when the elders declare it's time to give thanks and keep the gods sweet. A phrase that always makes you picture Thor with a mouthful of honey cakes and Loki eyeing the leftovers for mischief. The whole clan gathers at the edge of the sacred grove, where gnarled oaks crowd together, roots tangled like the braids in your hair after a windy day. The air here feels charged damp, heavy, and sweet with crushed moss, wild garlic, and the faint metallic scent of old magic. It's quiet too, except for the occasional snap of a twig or the shuffle of someone's boots. You get the sense that every word, every laugh, every nervous cough echoes straight to Asgard, where the gods are presumably lounging on clouds, betting on who will trip first. You clutch a small bundle, a loaf of bread baked this morning, with a thumbprint pressed into the crust for luck, plus the shiniest apple from yesterday's spoils, which you fiercely guarded from Bjorn and the chickens alike. The offering is humble, but you've seen enough stories to know that the gods aren't picky about the trappings. It's the intent, the hope, the nerve to ask for something in a world that rarely promises anything. The priestess appears, robed in furs and feathers, eyes sharp as icicles. She has the kind of voice that makes you stand up straighter, even before she says a word. "The gods see us," she intones, sweeping her arm in a circle that includes everyone, yes, even you. Even the dog sneaking bites from the altar. They watch our courage, our folly, and our feasts. They watch when we win and when we stumble. She meets your eyes and winks, so quick you almost miss it. You stifle a laugh, which, you're pretty sure, the gods appreciate as much as solemn silence. The ritual begins. Smoke rises from the fire, Thick and aromatic, a swirl of pine resin, dried herbs, and something you suspect is yesterday's leftover mead. You breathe it in and feel your head spin, the world narrowing to the flicker of flame and the hum of low-voiced prayers. Around you, hands reach out. Offerings are laid down: a braid of hair, a carved bead, a pinch of salt. The Jarl brings forth a chunk of venison that might once have belonged to the legendary stag, or, more likely, the butcher's brother's favorite sheep. But it's the thought that counts. When it's your turn, you step forward and place your bread and apple at the foot of the altar, murmuring a quick wish, nothing too ambitious. Just steady hands, safe travels, and maybe, if the gods are feeling generous, a little less mud in your boots next time. Your breath fogs in the chill air, heart thumping, and you swear you feel a ripple, as if the trees themselves are listening. Now, the shivers begin, not just from the cold, but from the weight of the moment, the sense that, for a heartbeat, you're standing at the threshold of something immense and unknowable. The priestess sings, voice rising and falling like the wind, and the clan joins in, a ragged chorus that grows louder, braver, as the flames dance higher. There's power in it, a wild, shared energy that makes your skin tingle and your doubts shrink. For all your training, your boasting, your noisy meals, this is what binds the clan, the sense that you're watched, guided, challenged, and if you're lucky, blessed by forces larger than you can ever name. Sometimes, the gods answer in subtle ways, a sudden shift in the breeze, a raven landing just so, a flame that refuses to die down. Today, a gust sweeps through the grove, scattering sparks into the twilight, and everyone gasps as a flock of starlings erupts overhead, wings flashing like coins. It's a sign your cousin whispers, and even the skeptical uncle who scoffs at omens looks a little uneasy. The offering fire dies down, embers glowing like rubies in the dusk. The priestess thanks the gods in a language older than stories, and the ceremony gently unwinds. People step away in ones and twos, voices hushed, feet soft on the moss. You linger, reluctant to break the spell, letting the last threads of smoke curl around you like a borrowed cloak. As you turn to go, you hear laughter high and bright, as if from a distance or a dream. For a split second, you wonder if it's one of the gods, amused by your apple and your wish for clean boots. You grin, deciding that if the gods want jokes, you'll give them plenty. Back at the village, the world feels both lighter and sharper. The chores await, and the gossip will start soon enough: who stumbled, who sang off key, who tried to sneak an extra offering and got caught by the chickens. But beneath all that, you carry something steady, something warm, a sense of being seen, connected, part of a story much bigger and much weirder than anything you could invent alone. That night, as you drift toward rest, the scent of pine and incense lingers in your hair, the memory of fire and voices woven tight into your bones. The gods may be watching, but so are you watching the world, the omens, and the next adventure on the horizon. A hush, and breathe. There's nothing quite like the moment your boots hit home soil, not after days or weeks of adventure, cold nights, bruises, half-won glory, and bread so hard it could double as a weapon. The world always looks different on a homecoming, the colors sharper, the air sweeter, and every sound, every barking dog, every child's shriek, every lazy clang of a hammer echoes with a sense of belonging. You didn't even realize you missed. You breathe it in, the mingled scent of pine needles, wood smoke, baking bread, and a hint of something unidentifiable. You hope it's not the midden heap. You don't make it 2 steps down the dock before the first wave of children barrels into you, arms and legs, sticky hands and shrill laughter. Each of them determined to claim the honor of the first hug, or the first tale, or the first look at me. I grew taller while you were gone. You stagger under the onslaught, laughing and trying not to drop your loot, your shield, or your dignity. The youngest, face still smeared with jam, demands to know if you fought any dragons. You nod, deadpan, and tell him you did, but that the dragons mostly just wanted a nap and a good story. Behind the horde comes the rest of your clan, emerging from the longhouse like bears blinking at the sun after a winter nap. Your mother wipes her hands on her apron and pulls you in for a hug that nearly cracks your ribs. Your father, ever the stoic, gives a nod so solemn it could turn milk to cheese. Freydis is embraced, then immediately scolded for tearing her tunic. She protests that it was a battle wound, though the goat nibbling the hem tells a different story. There's back slapping, cheek pinching, and the sort of teasing that says, "We missed you, even though you left your chores undone." The homecoming ritual is as old as the clan. You pile your gear by the door, deposit your loot for communal inspection. Is this really gold? It's a very shiny rock. Aunt's secret, and join the circle by the hearth. There, under the flicker of firelight and the swirl of wood smoke. You're expected to recount your adventures, the truth, the half-truth, and the bits so wildly exaggerated even the scald raises an eyebrow. You launch into your tale, embellishing where you must, the enemy twice as tall, the mud twice as deep, the loot twice as shiny. The children hang on every word, mouths open, eyes wide, while the elders exchange knowing looks and murmur their own versions of events. Every story earns you a cheer, a gasp, or a skeptical snort. The youngest cousin pipes up with a correction, insisting the dragons in her dreams had 2 heads, not 1, and you promise to look for them next time. But stories can only delay reality for so long. Before the mugs are even empty, someone remembers the goats need herding, and the wash needs scrubbing, and the magic of legend gives way to the grind of everyday life. You find yourself elbow deep in the world's coldest stream, pounding your tunic against a flat rock while a magpie looks on. Judging your technique, the mud that protected you in battle is now your mortal enemy, clinging to every fold and seam. You call that clean, your mother teases. And you roll your eyes, sloshing water everywhere. Laundry day is a saga all its own. The riverbank is alive with laughter, arguments, and the ever-present threat of being splashed by an errant bucket. You and Freydis compete to see who can wring out a tunic the fastest. The loser obliged to fetch firewood later. There's gossip. Of course, who fell off the boat, who lost their boots, who may or may not have kissed the baker's son behind the smokehouse. The air is full of secrets and suds, and somehow, by the time the sun hits the treetops, you've turned a chore into a celebration. Back at the longhouse, the spoils of adventure are divvied up: an amber bead for your grandmother, a sharp new knife for your uncle, a battered helmet for the armory, and the aforementioned shiny rock, ceremoniously gifted to the village cat, who sniffs it once and promptly loses interest. You're left with your wolf brooch, a torn scrap of sail, and a handful of wild stories, each one growing in grandeur every time it's retold, as dusk drapes the village in gold. You help your mother with supper, slicing bread and listening to the rhythm of daily life, the thump of kneaded dough, the hum of a lullaby, the soft snap of kindling. You realize how much you miss this, how the adventure is only half the story, and the coming home is just as fierce and full. After supper, you slip outside to watch the stars spark into being above the trees, breath turning to mist in the chill air. The world is quiet, save for the occasional laugh drifting from the longhouse and the gentle slap of water against the docks. You run your fingers over your shield, tracing the nicks and scratches, and feel a deep, glowing pride. Homecoming isn't always easy: the aches, the chores, the slow return to routine, but it's yours. The hugs, the gentle lies. Of course I wasn't scared, Mother. And the endless laundry are all proof you belong to something bigger than battles and glory. You stand on the edge of the dark, listening to the village heartbeat, and promise yourself you'll never forget the rush of leaving or the sweetness of coming home. A hush and breathe. The raiding stories have barely cooled, and the mud is still drying in the sun. But home life in the village picks up right where it left off, if anything, with more volume, more elbows, and definitely more opinions. If you ever believed Vikings spent their off days in noble silence, you've clearly never met your clan, where conversation is a full contact sport and every backyard is a battlefield of rumors, rivalries, and just enough affection to keep the walls from falling down. Take the village well, for instance, a perfectly innocent patch of stones and moss, always damp, always busy. It's where news travels fastest and patience runs thinnest. You can't fetch a bucket of water without being ambushed by Aunt Sigrid, who, between dousing the cabbages and hunting for her missing wooden spoon, manages to extract every secret, confession, and boast in a 10-mile radius. Did you hear about the goat that wandered into the Jarl's mead hall? She hisses, eyes gleaming. Or how Freydis nearly started a feud with the blacksmith's wife over a burnt loaf. You shake your head, partly in denial and partly to keep from laughing, but it doesn't matter. The stories have legs, and they sprint faster than you ever could. Gossip in the village is more reliable than any raven. It starts as a whisper, soft, hesitant, and probably true. By the time it reaches the third house, it's grown horns, learned how to sing, and is planning a trip across the fjord for dramatic effect. Yesterday's someone tripped in the mud becomes today's mysterious omen, foretelling the return of the legendary eel. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself starring in tales you don't remember living. I heard you fought off a pack of wolves with nothing but a fishbone and sheer stubbornness. Someone grins, and you nod, deciding it's easier to say yes than explain the real story, which involves a very slippery rock and a bad sense of direction. There are, of course, old grudges petty and epic, passed down like family recipes. Your cousin and the baker haven't spoken since last winter's salt incident, which began with a pinch and ended with bread so hard it chipped a tooth. The smith still blames the tanner for the time someone's sheep chewed up his best apron. Even your mother has a running tally with the neighbor over who first discovered that the North Field floods every spring. The answer, it was clearly me. And don't let her tell you otherwise. These grudges bubble under the surface, never quite boiling over, but always ready to add spice to the next feast. And then there's that one neighbor, you know the one. Every village has at least one a little too mysterious, a little too enthusiastic about odd hobbies, and always at the center of at least 3 conflicting rumors. In your case, it's old Gudrun, whose house sits at the far edge of the woods, where the shadows gather and the chickens never stray. She wears mismatched boots, talks to her goats as if they're dignitaries, and grows herbs no one else can name. Some say she's a witch, others just say she has eccentric tastes. You saw her once weaving something at twilight, looked suspiciously like a crown made from thistles and crow feathers. But when you asked, she just smiled and handed you a toadstool. For luck. You still have it tucked in your pouch, just in case. Children dare each other to run past Gudrun's gate, convinced she can see through walls, or turn misbehaving kids into frogs as if that would be much different. The adults, meanwhile, keep a wary distance, but find themselves quietly grateful when her potions clear up their coughs or her charms hang on doorways during storms. You've learned to wave hello, to accept the strange gifts, and to never, ever mock her singing, even when it echoes across the fields late at night. Between the well, the grudges, and Gudrun's goat-powered rumors, the daily drama never stops. You begin to appreciate how much work goes into keeping a small community running, how it's equal parts cooperation and chaos, kindness and good-natured sabotage. Sometimes, you long for the clean, simple lines of a battle, at least there. You know who you're facing. Here, you navigate a minefield of small slights, half-remembered favors, and ongoing negotiations over who gets the last piece of honey cake. Still, there's comfort in the familiarity. You know who will leave their cloak by the fire, who forgets to close the gate, who always saves the best seat by the hearth. You know the sound of your neighbor's laugh, the cadence of your cousin's complaint, the pattern of footsteps on the path outside your window. Even the gossip has a rhythm, a give and take, a way of stitching everyone together into something stronger and more forgiving than any shield wall. On the rare day when the village is truly quiet, you find yourself missing the noise, the babble, the bickering, the laughter that erupts when someone's grand tale unravels in the face of a well-timed goat bleat. You realize that home isn't just the place you return to after adventure, but the people who remember all your stories, true or not, and keep them alive in the telling. So, you pour yourself a mug of weak beer, settle on the bench outside the longhouse, and listen as the village spins another web of gossip, grudges, and wild speculation about Gudrun's latest project this week. She's building a floating garden, probably to attract mermaids. You laugh, lean back, and let yourself belong to the sweet, tangled mess of it all. A hush, and breathe. If you think facing down a berserker with nothing but a borrowed shield is risky, try catching feelings in a Viking village. Love is the trickiest battle of all, a fact known to every Shieldmaiden. bard, and baker's apprentice with a secret crush and a nervous stomach. There's no armor for it, no helmet to hide behind, and the only weapon anyone seems to wield is a clumsy compliment, or worse, a helpful relative determined to matchmake whether you want it or not. It usually starts in the most ridiculous ways. Maybe you're at the midsummer bonfire, hair still wet from the river. When you catch someone's eye across the flames, someone who looks at you with that half-terrified, half-dazzled look that says they either want to recite a poem or run away screaming. Or maybe you're in the middle of spear practice, mud up to your knees, when someone trips over their own feet and lands at yours, grinning like a fool, and you realize your heart is thumping for reasons that have nothing to do with battle drills. Of course, the entire clan seems to know before you do. Word travels faster than fire on dry grass. The day you spend a little too long plaiting your hair, or go out of your way to walk past the blacksmith's hut just to check on a repair. Naturally, there's a ripple through the village, and suddenly you can't get through breakfast without 3 ants making pointed comments about grandchildren and a nice strong back. Freydis, ever loyal, tries to run interference but only makes things worse. She's just interested in his axes, she declares, and then spends the next hour howling with laughter. Viking courtship is not for the faint-hearted. There are no secret notes slipped under doors, no bouquets of roses, mainly because the goats would eat them before you got a chance. Instead, it's a series of escalating dares, wrestling matches, riddling contests, attempts to out-sing each other at feasts. The bravest might carve a love token, a bead, a brooch, a scrap of runic poetry, and present it with all the grace of someone offering a live eel. The shy ones make up for it by accidentally turning up wherever you happen to be, whittling spoons or feeding chickens with a devotion bordering on the religious. If you're lucky, the feeling is mutual. If you're not, well, there's always the chance to laugh it off and claim you were just preparing for the next raid, as if sword practice has anything to do with blushes and sweaty palms. Occasionally. The matchmakers, usually older women, with more enthusiasm than subtlety stage interventions, so elaborate they make the gods weep. You return from a fishing trip to find your path blocked by a mysterious pile of flowers. Or worse, a suspiciously romantic song belted out at full volume by the village skald. Everyone joins in, and if you don't die of embarrassment, you might just find yourself laughing too hard to care. Then, of course, there are the practicalities. Love among Vikings is rarely candlelit strolls under the aurora. It's more like sneaking off to the edge of the field for a few whispered words while pretending to check the traps. You're interrupted by goats, little brothers, weather, or the occasional sudden downpour that leaves you both soaked and shivering. It's mud and wildflowers, the smell of wet wool and pine sap, the nervous tangle of fingers as you pass a charm or a promise or just a stolen moment. You learn that love is not always grand gestures. Sometimes, it's someone remembering how you take your porridge, saving you the last piece of bread, or standing up for you in the never-ending laundry wars. Sometimes it's a glance, a joke, a shared look over the top of a shield wall, a silent agreement that you'll watch each other's backs no matter what chaos the gods have planned. And then, just when you think you've gotten the hang of it, the village festival rolls around, a celebration of love, luck, and, let's be honest, another excuse to eat too much and sing even louder than usual. There are games and dances and contests to see who can eat the most honey cakes without passing out. The bravest or the most foolish step forward to declare their feelings in front of everyone, cheered on by the clan and heckled by their friends. Sometimes it goes well. Sometimes it goes so badly that the tale will be told for years, complete with increasingly dramatic reenactments. Still, no one holds a grudge. The next morning, the sun rises, the goats need milking, and life rolls on. The laughter lingers, the awkwardness fades, and somewhere in the mess of chores and chaos, you find that love has taken root, not always in the way you expected, but always real, always stubborn, always yours, for all the risks, heartache, embarrassment. Songs you'll never live down. Love is the wildest adventure of them all. It's the one thing you can't win by force, can't plan for, can't predict. No matter how many runes you cast or dreams you chase, you just show up, open-hearted and muddied, ready for the next ridiculous, beautiful, utterly unpredictable moment. As dusk falls, you and your maybe someone share a smile by the fire, the laughter of your clan swirling around you, and you think, if I can face this, I can face anything. You squeeze their hand, or maybe just trade a lopsided grin, and in that small golden hush, you realize you wouldn't trade the risk for all the dragon slaying in the world. A hush, and breathe. Winter in the north is not for the faint of heart, or the thin of sock. One morning, you wake to find the world turned to stone. The fjord frozen so hard you could skate an army across it, though. Let's be honest, only the children are reckless enough to try. The sun is a rumor, hiding behind a sky thick with snow clouds, and every breath stings your nose, your lips, your ears, and pretty much any bit you forgot to wrap in wool. You learn quickly that the real heroes aren't the warriors or the raiders. They're the ones who know how to patch a hole in your mitten with a scrap of goat hair and a spell of good luck. Inside the longhouse, the air is a dense soup of wood smoke, stew, wet socks, and a general sense of everyone's going a little stir crazy. You wake to the crackle of frost outside and the creak of rafters, the weight of snow pressing down on the thatch, and wonder if the roof will finally cave in this year. It won't. Not if your uncle has anything to say about it. He climbs up every morning to knock off the drifts, cursing like a sailor the whole way, until your grandmother threatens to chase him with a broom. There's not much to do, really, except keep the fire burning, mend everything that's ever been torn, and eat whatever's still edible in the cellar. You've never appreciated a humble turnip so much in your life. Every meal is a creative challenge. How many ways can you disguise dried fish? And will anyone notice if you sneak a carrot into the soup? You suspect your mother could make a feast from shoe leather and a sprinkle of salt. And frankly, no one is brave enough to challenge her. When there's bread, it's dense and dark, meant to last until spring. You eat it with a reverence usually reserved for rare treasures and the last honeycomb. As the days blend into one another, light gray melting to dark gray. Sunrise a quick rumor. Before the long hush of dusk, everyone develops a case of cabin madness. Children race around the benches, shrieking and weaving between legs, until someone invents a game that involves stuffing them into snowdrifts outside for a minute of peace. Your brother decides now is the perfect time to practice juggling axes indoors, which is why the family shield hangs over the hearth with a suspicious new dent. Freydis shows up with a sled she swears she built herself, though it looks suspiciously like your aunt's missing washboard. Despite the boredom, winter is a season for stories. Each night, after supper, the clan gathers close around the hearth dog included, snoring with all 4 feet in the air, and trades tales old and new. The oldest uncle, half asleep, starts the saga of the white bear for the 100th time. And no one interrupts, not even the little ones who know every twist by heart. Your grandmother adds flourishes, turning the bear into a shape-shifting princess, while someone else throws in a sea monster or two just to keep things lively. The skald listens quietly, making mental notes for next summer's feasts, where these tales will be retold, louder and taller. There are long, dreamy evenings spent braiding hair, patching cloaks, and carving runes into scraps of driftwood. You learn a dozen new knots, most of which you promptly forget, and invent 3 new dice games, all of which end with someone losing their last bit of dried apple. Outside, the wind howls and the snow piles higher, the world shrinking to the glow of the hearth and the circle of voices within. Sometimes, you sneak outside, wrapped in every layer you own, just to feel the hush of the world under snow. The stars seem closer, brighter, as if you could pluck them down and tuck them in your pocket. The air is so clear and cold, it feels like you could shatter it with a word. The forest is silent, save for the crunch of your boots and the distant, eerie call of an owl. You make snow angels quickly, before your backside freezes solid and hurls snowballs at the unsuspecting goat, who, for once, doesn't look amused. But even in the dark months, there's joy the promise of Yule, with its candles and songs, and the wild excitement of the feast to come. You string dried berries and bits of cloth above the door, hang charms in the rafters, and stay up late baking sweet bread with your mother, licking the honey from your fingers and dreaming of longer days. There are nights when the wind rattles the shutters and the stories grow quieter, and you remember those you've lost: old warriors, friends, the uncle who once claimed he could talk to wolves. You share their tales, light a candle, and let the memories flicker and dance in the firelight. Loss feels sharp in winter, but so does belonging. It's here, in the deep cold, that you understand what it means to be part of something bigger, a clan, a story, a line of stubborn, laughing, hungry, hopeful souls who will make it through together. And then, just when you think you'll never see green again, you wake one morning to the drip drip of melting snow, the first bird singing in the pines, the faintest promise of sunlight on the horizon. You run outside, boots squelching, and breathe deep spring is coming. You survive the darkness, the turnips, the stories, and each other. You return to the longhouse, cheeks tingling, heart wide open, and know the winter made you stronger, braver, and a little bit better at dice. A hush, and breathe. If you think the Vikings only valued brute strength and big axes, you've never seen a clan gathering dissolve into chaos at the mere strum of a lyre. For all the mud, muscle, and daily drama, there's nothing your people adore quite so much as a story, told while a tale spun thick with exaggeration, laughter, and just enough truth to keep it believable. And at the heart of it all stands the Skald, master of words, singer of sagas, and undisputed champion of scandalous verse. Tonight, the longhouse is bursting. It's the kind of feast that lasts until the fire gutters and the youngest children are snoring in the straw. The air tastes of roasting meat, spilled mead, and the sharp tang of anticipation. Every time the conversation lulls, someone shouts for a song, and every time, eyes turn to the Skald, who soaks up the attention like a sunbathing cat. He's not much to look at, hair a wild tangle, cheeks red from both cold and ale, but when he rises, mug in hand, the crowd hushes as if Odin himself has called for silence. He starts with the classics. Of course, epic tales of battles won, monsters vanquished, and ancestors braver, taller, and more handsome than anyone alive today. You hear the old stories in every village, but somehow they sound fresher, wilder here, spun with clever rhymes and enough comic timing to keep even the most distracted cousin listening. The Skald thumps a drum, stamps his feet, and paints the past in colors so vivid you swear you can feel the clash of swords and the sting of cold seawater on your face. But it's never just the old legends. No, a true Skald knows his real power lies in making the present unforgettable and, if possible, a little bit embarrassing. Before you can blink, the saga shifts now. He's singing about the last raid, about how Freydis bravely rescued the Jarl's helmet from the jaws of a very confused sheep. The sheep, incidentally, is now considered an honorary member of the war band. He slips in jokes about Bjorn's muddy boots, Aunt Sigrid's terrifying pickled fish, and that time, you mistook a pile of laundry for a wild boar and sounded the alarm. The laughter is thunderous, a wave of joy crashing over the benches. The children shriek and clap, the old men pound the table, and even the dogs seem to grin. The Skald basks in it all, bowing with exaggerated flourishes, daring anyone to challenge his version of events. Someone does. Naturally, there's always a brave soul or a tipsy cousin ready to offer their own improvements. The result is a duet, then a chorus, then utter mayhem as the room erupts in off-key harmony. The noise is glorious, unstoppable, a living thing that lifts the rafters and scares away any lingering shadows. Not every song is scandalous, though the best ones certainly are. There are gentle ballads, two haunting melodies that hush the room and draw tears from even the gruffest warriors. The Skald sings of lovers lost to the sea, of children born in the spring thaw, of friends who never made it home, but whose names still ring in every song. You find yourself caught in the music, breathless, feeling the ache of old wounds and the sweetness of shared hope. The Skald knows when to linger, when to let the silence settle, when to wink and steer the mood back to laughter with a sly verse about Gudrun's magical goat and its suspicious fondness for mead. You're never quite sure how much of it is true, and that's half the fun. Every saga gets taller with each telling. Every scandal grows a second head and a new punchline. The Skald has a memory like a fox and the courage of a fool, happy to roast the mighty and the meek in equal measure. You try to duck when your own adventures come up no use. By the end of the night, You've starred in at least 3 new ballads, including one about the mysterious case of the disappearing shoe that will follow you for months. But here's the secret: the sagas aren't just entertainment, they're glue. They bind the clan together, remind you of who you are, where you come from, and why it matters that you laugh at yourself just as much as you cheer for your heroes. The Skald's gift isn't just in making people roar or cry, it's in making everyone feel for a moment. Like they belong to something larger, wilder, and infinitely more interesting than the daily grind of goats and firewood. Eventually, the fire sinks low, the mead runs out, and voices grow hoarse. The Skald closes with a lullaby, soft, low, meant for the youngest ears, but you feel it in your own bones. He sings of morning light over the fjord, of new stories waiting to be lived, of the promise that as long as there are voices to remember, no one is ever truly gone. You crawl to your sleeping place, ears still ringing with laughter and music, heart light and soul full. Outside, the stars burn cold and fierce, and you wonder what tales they'll inspire tomorrow, what new scandals, what fresh sagas, what truths so exaggerated they've almost become real. And as you drift, you realize you'd trade all the gold in the world for just one more night like this, a song, a scandal, and the Skald's knowing smile, a hush, and breathe. You know you're in a true Viking village when the sound of hammers on timber is as steady as your own heartbeat. Morning, noon, and well past the hour when sensible people should be in bed. If you thought adventure was all about swordplay and sagas, you haven't met the shipwrights, the backbone, brains, and occasional barking lunatics of the fjord. These are the folks who can look at a pile of logs and see a dragon-headed longship, who can argue about the proper angle of a keel with the same ferocity your aunts reserve for honey cake recipes, and who have enough sawdust in their beards to mulch half the forest. It always starts with a tree, a massive pine or oak, felled with ceremony and a brief, sometimes slightly panicked prayer that the gods aren't particularly attached to this one. There's a whole ritual: axes sharp, hands steady, children watching with wide eyes and sticky fingers. You're handed a tool, maybe a mallet or a wedge, and told to make yourself useful. Even if you're more comfortable with a shield than a saw, you find yourself swept into the current, peeling bark, hauling planks, squinting at blueprints that look like a chicken's been dancing on them after a heavy night out. The scent is unmistakable raw sap, fresh chips, cold iron, and the tang of tar heating in the sun. You rub sawdust from your eyes, it gets everywhere: hair, boots, occasionally your breakfast, and try not to flinch as the master shipwright, arms like tree trunks and voice like rolling thunder, barks instructions. Not like that. Unless you want your ship to sail in circles, he growls, and everyone laughs, except for the rookie whose plank really is a bit too bendy. You all know the rules: measure twice, cut once, and keep your fingers out of the way, or the next saga might be named after your missing thumb. There's something magical about building a ship. It's not just the labor, the ache in your arms, or the way your back complains for days after a particularly stubborn timber. It's the transformation watching a skeleton of wood and rope become a thing that might, one day soon, carry you across the endless gray sea. The kids take bets on which plank will splinter first. The elders weigh in with advice. Back in my day, we didn't have all these fancy nails, and the dogs, as ever, contribute by lying exactly where you need to step. You catch Freda smuggling an extra carving into the prow, something that looks suspiciously like a snake wearing a crown, for luck, she claims, or to scare the fish. They have it too easy. There's debate over the figurehead dragon or serpent, wolf or bear, or maybe just a really intimidating turnip. You argue, you vote, and in the end, someone sneaks out in the dead of night to add a pair of googly eyes, just to see if anyone notices. They do. The master shipwright is not amused. The rest of the village is. Building a ship is noisy, messy, and communal. Someone's always singing, usually off-key, sometimes scandalous, while saws screech, chisels bite, and wooden pegs are hammered home with all the subtlety of a thunderstorm. You pick up tricks: how to bend wood over steam, how to pitch a seam so water stays where it belongs, how to tie knots that don't unravel at the first taste of salt. Every now and then, A Skald drops by, sniffing out metaphors and inspiration, jotting notes for the next saga about the day the ship's ribs snapped and the builder's temper with it, and the Sea King's well. They're a breed apart, the seasoned captains, eyes squinted from years facing sun and spray, who walk the yard like they already own the ocean. They test every joint, prod every board, ask impossible questions. Will she ride high in a storm? Can she outpace the wind? Did you remember to put the drain hole in the right spot this time? They recount tales of voyages past, lost harbors found, storms survived, and every ship they've loved or lost. You listen, half in awe, half in skepticism after all. Last year's biggest catch turned out to be a barrel of pickles, but you'll never get them to admit it. There's rivalry. To each clan certain their method is best, their tools sharper, their pitch recipe the secret to unsinkable holes. On launch day, when the ship finally slides into the water, there's more pride than at a dozen weddings. You stand on the muddy shore, holding your breath, as the boat shivers, bobs, and miracle of miracles floats. A cheer rises, hats fly. Someone falls in, usually Bjorn, and the dogs lose their minds. Before the maiden voyage, the ship gets its blessing, a sprinkle of ale, a song, maybe a secret carved under the keel. You lay a palm on her side, feeling the cool, smooth strength of the wood, and imagine the world she'll see, distant shores, storm-racked nights, new sagas waiting to be written. Your heart thumps with pride, worry, excitement, and maybe just a little fear. The sea is a hungry thing, and you know every plank, every nail, every drop of sweat is a tiny bargain struck with the waves. When the village gathers to feast and toast the launch, you're sticky with tar, arms aching, eyes gritty with sleep but grinning. The old stories say every ship has a soul, and tonight, you believe it. You helped make something that will outlast you, that will carry your people toward tomorrow, toward whatever waits beyond the horizon. You look at the ship, her lines sharp, her prow proud, her googly eyes mysteriously vanished, and think, that's what it means to build for tomorrow. Not just wood and sweat, but hope, daring, and a little bit of mischief. A hush and breathe, for all the stories of fearless raids and dragon-proud ships. The truth is, Viking life is one endless chess match, half of it played on muddy ground, the other half at smoky feasts, where every toast could double as a warning, and every handshake is just as likely to hide a dagger as a promise. There's always a rival lurking across the river, an old feud simmering on the edge of a smile, or a new alliance in the making, sealed with a mug of mead and a wink that says, let's see how long this lasts. You wake one morning to find the village buzzing with more than the usual gossip. Freitas bursts in, hair wild, eyes wide, and hisses. They're coming, the Red Fjord clan, and they're bringing gifts. You know exactly what that means. Gifts are never just gifts. They're coded messages, feelers for truce, or thinly disguised boasts. If someone shows up with a painted shield, it's as much a declaration of intent as a bouquet of flowers and, let's be honest, much more practical. By midday, the rival clan arrives in a thump of boots and a flare of banners, looking more or less just like you, windblown, wary, sizing up the competition with the keen eyes of people who have lost and won and want to do both again. If only for the stories. You lock eyes with a girl your own age, her braids tighter, her cloak finer, and you both do the polite thing, grin like wolves, and mentally calculate if she's faster than you. There's a dance to these meetings. First, the formal greetings, everyone saying the right words, smiling just enough to pass for friendly, but never quite taking their hand off their weapon. Then come the exchanges, salted fish, amber beads, a silver brooch. The elders make speeches. The skald recites an epic that's somehow complimentary to everyone and no one. And the dogs who care not at all for politics start a brawl over a bone. It's all ritual, all routine, and yet, every single time, you feel the undercurrent tension, excitement, that edge of the sword uncertainty. You're not supposed to stare, but you can't help it. Their shields are a little rounder, their boots a little newer, and someone on their side has a laugh that sounds like rain on stone. There are silent messages traded across the table, the quick lift of a brow, the curl of a lip, a joke tossed just loud enough for you to hear. Rivalry here isn't always about swords, sometimes. It's who can carve the sharpest insult. or whose feast boasts the fattest goose. But if you think it's all competition, think again. Alliances are as common as feuds, and usually more confusing. Sometimes, you join forces to face a bigger threat raiders from across the sea, a pack of wolves bold enough to harass the cattle, or, most terrifying, a marriage proposal from a particularly insistent Jarl's son. The clan still laughs about the time Aunt Sigrid faked a haunting just to scare off one overeager suitor. Deals are struck over bread and blood, witnessed by gods and goats alike. There are rules, of course some spoken, some passed down in the hush after a feast, some understood only by those who have survived a winter together. Never insult a guest's shoes, no matter how silly. Always share the last cup of mead, even if you'd rather pour it over their head. If an enemy saves your life, you owe them 3 favors, and woe betide anyone who tries to shirk their debt. Sometimes, you find yourself in the thick of it, paired with a rival for a contest stone throwing, log lifting, or, if things get truly desperate, a poetry duel. You lock eyes, grinning, trying to outdo each other. And by the end, you're laughing so hard, you forget you're supposed to be enemies. You sneak off together, swapping tales, learning that their fears and hopes aren't so different from your own. You trade a bead, a joke, maybe even a secret, and the next morning, you both return to your camps pretending nothing happened. But with new respect gleaming between you like a well-sharpened blade, there are, inevitably, the unwritten rules, the ones no one says out loud but everyone knows. Don't challenge the oldest man in the village to arm wrestling unless you want to spend a week fetching firewood. Don't eat the last turnip without leaving an offering for the house spirits. And above all, don't let the Red Fjord clan win at boat races 2 years in a row. The boasting will echo for generations. The alliances ebb and flow with the seasons, as shifting as the tide, as fragile as a fresh-baked loaf. One year, you're feasting together, the next, you're arguing over fishing rights and who's responsible for the mysterious disappearance of 3 perfectly innocent chickens. The chickens, as it happens, are neither lost nor innocent, just smart enough to hide in Gudrun's garden until things blow over. By sunset, the formalities fade, replaced by a riotous feast where no one cares who's friend or foe, only who can sing loudest or dance longest. Rivalries simmer, alliances are toasted, and somewhere in the corner, you and your new not-quite enemy plot a prank involving a goat, a horn of mead, and the world's most gullible uncle. When the Red Fjord clan finally heads back into the night, you stand at the edge of the village, watching their torches flicker away. You wonder what tomorrow will bring: feud or friendship, challenge or cheer, or maybe, if the gods are bored, all of the above. You return home, a little wiser, a little warier, your head full of new faces and old stories, grateful for every enemy that keeps you sharp and every ally who keeps you sane. A hush and breathe. You don't really know the land until you've been lost in it, until the sky closes in with twilight and every tree seems to lean in for a better look. It starts, as all the best stories do, with a simple errand gathering berries, tracking a wayward goat, maybe chasing after your little brother, who swears he saw a silver fox at the edge of the pines. One moment, you're whistling along a well-worn path, sunlight dappling your arms. The next, you're knee-deep in ferns with no idea which way is home and a stomach full of nerves. The forest is a world unto itself, thick with the scent of moss and wet earth, damp ferns brushing your calves, the constant rustle of unseen things moving just out of sight. Branches creak overhead, and the wind shivers through the leaves like someone whispering secrets you're not quite meant to hear. You pause, trying to remember all those useful bits of advice your elders drilled into you, like how to find north using the moss on trees. Except every tree here seems to be wearing a green fuzzy sock, or how to keep your wits about you when you hear a wolf's howl, which, naturally, is exactly when you hear one, low and distant, a note that makes the hair on your arms stand up. You tell yourself not to panic, but your imagination doesn't listen. Every crackle in the undergrowth could be a fox, or a bear, or, if you believe the stories, a troll hunting for its next snack. You clutch your knife, more for comfort than any real expectation you'll fend off a monster, and scan the shadows for glowing eyes or stony skin. The truth is, you'd almost rather face a troll than is return to the village and admit you got turned around. At least a troll wouldn't tease you for a year and a day. But then, as dusk deepens and the mist thickens, something magical happens. The world slows, your breath comes softer, and the frantic thump of your heart eases into the background. You notice details: the rough skin of a birch tree under your palm, the tang of wild berries bursting between your teeth, the way the path, if there is a path, winds between stones, furry with lichen. There's a strange comfort in the wildness, a reminder that you're part of this world, not just passing through it. You whisper greetings to the land spirits, toss a crumb to the birds, and feel, if only for a moment, as if you belong to something ancient and wise. Still, you're not alone. There are the wolves, silent shapes moving through the trees, eyes reflecting the last light of day. You remember every tale told by firelight wolves that speak in riddles, wolves that lead lost travelers home, wolves that steal bread but leave bones in return. You move quietly, keeping your distance, but you're not afraid. You know enough to respect their world, to give space and never, ever run. Of course. Then there are the trolls. Ask any Viking child, and they'll swear the hills walk at night, that stones shift places while you sleep, and that if you step into a fairy ring, you'll lose time or your memory, or your best sock. You keep your eyes open for the telltale signs: mushrooms in a perfect circle, a sudden hush where birds were just singing, a boulder with a face if you squint sideways. If you do spot a troll or a suspiciously troll-shaped rock, you tip your hat, mutter a polite greeting, and move along. It never hurts to be cautious. And then come the tall tales. As night creeps in and you finally stumble back to the path, muddy, scraped, and clutching a handful of wild berries, you're already rehearsing the story you'll tell. Maybe you'll claim you fought off a pack of wolves with nothing but a stick and a heroic glare, or that you saw a troll and escaped by reciting a poem so bad it fled in terror. You know, deep down, you were mostly just lucky. But in the retelling, luck always turns into legend. When you do make it home, dripping with dew and sporting a scratch or two, the clan is waiting. There are shouts and laughter, a round of gentle ribbing. Did you at least bring back the goat, and a mug of something hot pressed into your hands? You spin your story, watching faces widen with wonder, horror, or skepticism. Someone throws another log on the fire, and before you know it, your misadventure has become the latest saga, embellished with every telling, embroidered with new perils and triumphs. You listen, too, as others share their tales of the wild of moonlit wanderings, sudden storms, close calls with wild boar, or the mysterious lights that sometimes flicker on the far side of the marsh. Freda swears she once bargained with a fox for safe passage. Your uncle claims to have outstared an owl until dawn. Gudrun, naturally, chimes in with a warning about the dangers of eating fairy mushrooms, as if anyone could mistake them for the normal, mostly harmless sort. As the fire burns low and the stars spill across the sky, you realize that getting lost wasn't so terrible after all. In fact, it's a rite of passage, a reminder that the wild is never far away, that every shadow hides a story, and that you're braver than you knew. You press a berry-stained thumb to your lips, whisper a quick thanks to whatever spirits watched your back, and lean in close as the tales continue. Tomorrow you'll walk the same paths, only with more respect and a better sense of direction, or so you'll claim. You'll smile at the trees, nod to the wolves, and maybe, just maybe, leave a biscuit for the trolls, a hush, and breathe. There comes a time, even for the boldest Shieldmaiden, when the sword is hung on its peg, the shield patched and stacked with the rest, and the village quiets to a hush that feels like the closing of a well-loved book. The world outside still spins, waves slap the shore, crows bicker over crumbs, and the smell of wood smoke curls in the cold air. But you sense a turning, a soft drawing down of the saga's last curtain. Tonight, the sky is heavy with stars, the kind that make the fjord glimmer like a spilled basket of silver beads. You walk slow along the shore, boots sinking into the dark sand, cloak pulled tight against the chill. Behind you, laughter leaks from the longhouse echoes of old stories, the scrape of mugs, and the familiar jangle of someone failing spectacularly at the lyre. Some traditions, like Bjorn's off-key singing, refuse to die. You pause and listen. letting it all wash over you, the living pulse of a clan that's more family than legend, more honest than any saga could capture. This is how legends are born, not in thunder or blood, but in the quiet after. The glow of the fire on a circle of faces, the warmth of hands pressed in farewell, the hush before someone begins the tale again. Only a little changed, a little taller, a little more yours. You realize, suddenly, that every laugh, every bruise, every late-night secret is woven into the story as surely as any feat of arms. Even the smallest kindness, a cup of mead, a steady arm after too much celebrating, outlives the fiercest battle. You remember the first time you were called Shieldmaiden, how your voice shook, how you tried to look braver than you felt, how the elders smiled like they'd seen 100 Shieldmaidens before you, and knew exactly what storms you'd weather. You recall the blisters, the silly songs, the stubborn friendships that held you upright when the world tilted sideways, the seasons blurring together, the icy sting of the fjord in spring, the laughter of feasts, the endless, beautiful ache of waiting for news, for love, for adventure, the tears for those who did not return, the promises whispered into the night, carried on the wind, tonight. As the moon climbs and the last embers fade, someone asks for a story, a real one, not just another tale of trolls and treasure. The skald gestures for silence, and you realize, with a start, that all eyes are on you. You cough, stall for time. But there's no escaping. Your saga is wanted. Your voice needed to carry memory forward. You start simply. With the truth, we were all scared, but we went anyway. We laughed more than we fought, and we found more trouble than treasure. I lost my best boot and my worst temper, but never my friends. The crowd chuckles. Someone tosses you a mug, and you drink, finding courage at the bottom. You talk of love found and lost, of ships built and storms weathered, of secrets kept and grudges forgiven. Or, at least, forgotten over the right piece of cake. The little ones stare wide-eyed. The elders nod, seeing themselves in every stumble and every triumph. It's not a story of heroes, you realize, but a story of people. Messy, noisy, stubborn, hungry, hilarious people surviving, together, against whatever the world throws their way. There's magic in that, not dragons or gods, though you give them a respectful nod, just in case they're listening. But the everyday alchemy of turning sweat and fear and joy into something worth remembering. When you finish, the longhouse is quiet for a breath. Then, someone starts to sing soft, slow, the sort of song that settles deep in your bones. The fire pops, sparks swirling up into the rafters, and you close your eyes, letting the music wrap around you. You think of all the shield maidens before you, some remembered, some forgotten, each one lighting the way for those yet to come. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters and the world keeps turning. The fjord will freeze and thaw, the forests will swallow and reveal, the sky will blaze and darken and blaze again. You, too, will leave your mark, a name whispered in a story, a laugh remembered at the washing stones, a handprint pressed in soft clay. Maybe, years from now, a child will find your brooch at the edge of the wildwood and invent a legend of their own. The final saga is never truly the end. It drifts onward, carried by memory, by song, by the heartbeat of a people who know that endings are just another kind of beginning. You stand in the doorway, the moon silver on your brow, and promise yourself to live so that your story is worth telling. Messy, glorious, unfinished. Inside, the fire fades. Outside, the sea sighs. You smile quietly, knowing that in some way, the story always finds its way home. A hush, and breathe.